At 0900 hours on March 5, 1945, rifleman Banbakta Gurung lay pressed into the damp jungle earth beneath Snowdon East Hill as Japanese machine gun fire shredded the bamboo above his section. Splinters snapped. Leaves exploded. Dirt rained down on his helmet. He was 24 years old, a veteran of the first Chindit expedition, one of the few who had survived that march into hell 2 years earlier. Of the 3,000 Gurkhas who crossed into Burma during Operation Longcloth in 1943, only 2,182 returned. 818 men lost. 27% casualties. Gurung had been one of the survivors, dragging himself back across the Chindwin River, skeletal, fevered, half-blind from malaria and dysentery. He'd earned his promotion the hard way. Corporal. He'd led men behind Japanese lines for months, blowing railways, evading patrols, living on nothing but grit and luck. Then came September 1944. In the Arakan, his platoon commander ordered him to seize a hill. Gurung took it, exactly as instructed. The problem was simple and fatal to a career. It was the wrong hill. The coordinates were wrong. The order was wrong. But the blame fell on him. Demoted. Stripped of rank. Transferred to be company, 3rd Battalion, 2nd Gurkha Rifles, a rifleman again. Now he was back in Burma. Back in the jungle. And Snowdon East Hill was killing Gurkhas. The day before, 45 men had fallen trying to take this same slope. The Japanese 54th Division had retaken the ridge during the night, digging in fast, efficient, ruthless. Interlocking bunkers. Foxholes. Mortars. A light machine gun bunker dominating the northern crest. And a sniper. 75 yards south. High in a tree. 3 Gurkhas already dead. The section commander was down. The 10 remaining men were pinned flat in elephant grass. Unable to move forward. Unable to withdraw. Every crack of the sniper's rifle meant another man might not stand again. Gurung tried to line up a shot from prone. The angle was wrong. To hit the sniper, he would have to stand up, fully exposed to the sniper, the machine gun bunker, and at least 4 visible foxholes. The men around him knew what that meant. They'd seen what happened to soldiers who stood up in a firefight. But Gurung had stopped waiting for permission a long time ago. He checked his Lee Enfield. Grenades at his belt. The kukri, the curved blade every Gurkha carried, hung at his side. None of it mattered while the sniper was alive. The decision came instantly. Gurung rose to his feet. Machine gun rounds snapped past his head. He ignored them. Found the tree. Found the movement. Squeezed the trigger. The sniper fell, dead before he hit the ground. The section surged forward. 20 yards from the crest, the Japanese opened fire with everything. Mortars thumped. Rifles cracked. The machine gun hammered the slope. The Gurkhas hit the dirt again, pinned, exposed, dying by inches. Gurung didn't wait this time. He grabbed 2 grenades and charged the nearest foxhole. Both grenades went in. Both Japanese soldiers died. He ran to the next position, no grenades left. Just bayonet and speed. The fight was over in seconds. 2 foxholes remained, both still covering his section. Gurung went after them alone. Rush. Kill. Move. Rush. Kill. Move. All the while, the machine gun bunker at the northern tip of the ridge fired continuously at point-blank range. The gunner should have cut him down a dozen times over. But Gurung kept moving. For foxholes cleared. The bunker still fired. And it wasn't just pinning his platoon. Another Gurkha platoon advancing from the west was trapped by the same gun. For the 5th time that morning, Gurung charged forward alone. The bunker was solid concrete, dug into the hillside. Grenades gone. Kukri ready. He climbed onto the roof. With no fragmentation grenades left, he pulled 2 number 77 white phosphorus smoke grenades from his kit, the same kind used by the Chindits for signaling. He shoved them through the firing slit. Smoke poured out. 2 Japanese soldiers stumbled from the bunker, blinded and choking. Gurung's kukri flashed twice. Both fell. The machine gun was still firing. Gurung dropped to the slit and crawled inside. The bunker was dark, cramped, choking with smoke. The gunner was 3 feet away, hands still on the Type 92 machine gun. No room to swing the blade. Gurung's hand found a rock on the bunker floor. He struck once. Then again. The gunner collapsed. The machine gun fell silent. Snowdon East Hill belonged to the Gurkhas. Gurung shoved the Type 92 toward the entrance and shouted for a Bren gunner and 2 riflemen. They scrambled up the slope, took positions, and turned the captured weapon outward. The gun was still warm, still loaded. Now it was theirs. Below the ridge, Japanese voices rose, officers shouting, equipment rattling, survivors regrouping for a counterattack. They came fast, wave after wave, bayonets fixed, grenades in hand. The Bren gun opened up. The captured Type 92 joined in. Gurung worked his Lee Enfield, steady and precise. What had been a death trap 30 minutes earlier was now a fortress. Bodies piled at the base of the slope. The counterattack broke. By noon, Snowdon East was secure. The road to Wan Pass was open. The 82nd West African Division could evacuate their wounded. B Company counted the cost. 45 Gurkhas killed or wounded. 66 Japanese dead. The arithmetic of jungle warfare. Gurung's company commander found him in the captured bunker. He looked at the dead gunner. The blood-smeared rock on the floor. The kukri, still clean in its sheath. He said nothing, just nodded. By evening, the story had spread through the battalion. The rifleman who stood up under machine gun fire, who cleared 5 positions alone, who used rifle, grenades, bayonet, kukri, and finally a rock to break a concrete bunker. The men who'd known him since the Chindits weren't surprised. They'd seen what Banbakta Gurung did when everything went wrong. For many men in the battalion, Banbakta Gurung's name was being spoken for the first time. What they didn't know was the weight he'd been carrying since September 1944. The demotion, the transfer, the knowledge that he had done exactly what he was ordered to do and paid the price for someone else's mistake. That kind of injustice doesn't fade. It burns quietly. Gurung hadn't charged 5 Japanese positions on Snowdon East to prove anything. He hadn't been trying to reclaim rank or reputation. He had been trying to keep his section alive. Nothing more. But somewhere in those charges, between the sniper in the tree and the machine gun bunker, something shifted. The shame of the demotion mattered less now. The men who had followed him up that hill knew exactly what he was worth. The kukri was the weapon that defined the Gurkhas. 18 inches of curved steel. One edge razor sharp, the spine thick and heavy enough to split bone. British officers loved telling stories about it. Japanese soldiers feared it. Every enemy in Burma knew what a kukri could do at arm's length. But inside that bunker, cramped, choking with smoke, ceiling barely high enough to crawl, the blade Gurung had carried since basic training was useless. No space to swing. No room to maneuver. The rock worked better. Night fell over Snowdon East. The Gurkhas dug in, strung wire, posted sentries. The Japanese 54th Division was still out there in the jungle, still dangerous, still disciplined. The war in Burma had turned, but it wasn't finished. General Slim's 14th Army was driving south, toward Rangoon. The 25th Indian Division had a specific task: hold the Arakan front, fix Japanese forces in place, and bleed them while the main offensive broke through central Burma. Gurung sat in the bunker he had taken and cleaned his rifle. His hands were steady. The adrenaline had burned off hours earlier. What remained was exhaustion and the weight of what he'd done. 5 enemy positions. At least 9 Japanese soldiers killed by his hand. Possibly more. The numbers blurred in combat. What mattered was the hill was secure, and most of his section was still alive. Everyone asked the same question in different ways. How does one man charge 5 fortified positions under machine gun fire and survive? Gurung had no answer. Luck. Timing. A gunner's aim off by inches. Fate, if you believed in that. He'd done what needed doing and somehow hadn't died. That was enough. But the war wasn't finished with Rifleman Banbakta Gurung. March 5, 1945 was only one day, one hill, in a campaign that had been grinding through Burma for 3 brutal years. What happened next would decide whether anyone beyond B Company ever learned his name. The 3rd Battalion, 2nd Gurkha Rifles traced its lineage back to 1815. They'd fought at Burtupur, survived the Indian Mutiny, served on the Western Front in the First World War. Now they were part of the largest British Indian force ever assembled in Southeast Asia. Over 500,000 men facing a Japanese army that had conquered Malaya, Singapore, and most of Burma in less than 6 months in 1942. Gurung had joined the regiment in 1940 at 18, recruited from Phalpu, a hill village in Nepal's Gurkha district. Poor land. Hard farming. Few options. Most young men either worked the terraces their fathers had worked or joined the army. The British paid regularly. Gurkha soldiers sent money home. If you survived, it was steady work. Basic training in India lasted 4 months. Marksmanship with the Lee Enfield. Bayonet fighting. Hand-to-hand combat with the kukri. Physical conditioning designed to break weaker men. Many did break. Gurung didn't. He was built for this. Compact, powerful, with the endurance of someone raised in the Himalayan foothills, where every journey meant climbing a mountain. By early 1943, he was a Lance Knock. Then came Operation Longcloth. Brigadier ordered Wingate's experiment. Send 3,000 men deep behind Japanese lines, cut railways, destroy communications, prove Allied forces could operate where the enemy thought they couldn't. The Chindits, named after the mythical guardian lions of Burmese temples. Gurung's column crossed the Chindwin River on February 14, 1943. They marched for 3 months through jungle, blew bridges, ambushed patrols, lived on airdrops and whatever they could scavenge. When it ended, 818 men were dead, missing, or captured. Of those who returned, only 600 were fit for duty. The rest were destroyed by malaria, dysentery, starvation, exhaustion. Some weighed 30 pounds less than when they'd crossed into Burma. Gurung survived. He was promoted to Naik, full corporal, during the operation for leading his section out of an ambush. That promotion mattered. Chindit veterans were respected. They had seen what most infantry never would. Then came the Arakan campaign, late 1944. On September 19th, Gurung's platoon commander ordered him to secure a hill. Gurung took the hill, dug in, held it. It was the wrong hill. Someone had to take the blame. The platoon commander pointed at him. Gurung tried to explain. He had followed the coordinates exactly. It didn't matter. An officer's word outweighed a Gurkha NCO's. Charged with neglect of duty, stripped of rank, reduced to rifleman, transferred to B Company. It was the kind of injustice that broke some men. Gurung didn't protest, didn't argue. He knew the truth. His section knew the truth. That had to be enough. By February 1945, the battalion landed at WWII and pushed inland toward Tamandu. The Japanese 54th Division waited in the hills. Every ridge was a fortress. Every advance cost blood. B Company drew Snowdon east. March 4th, the Japanese retook it. 45 Gurkhas fell. March 5th, B Company was ordered to take it back at any cost. Gurung's section was in the lead. That's where the story truly began. Not with the rock, not with the kukri, not with the bunker. It began with a rifleman who had nothing left to prove and everything left to lose. The battalion held Snowdon east for the next week. Japanese patrols probed every night. Mortars, snipers, small attacks meant to break resolve. None succeeded. By mid-March, the 25th Division pushed deeper into the Arakan. The Japanese fell back methodically, holding, bleeding, withdrawing. The company commander filed the after-action report. Times, positions, witness statements. Every detail confirmed. The sniper, the foxholes, the bunker, the rock. The paperwork moved upward. And for the first time since September, the truth had somewhere to go. Officers who had spent 3 years fighting in Burma had seen courage. This was something else. 5 fortified positions cleared by a single man. Continuous machine gun fire. No pause. No support. No orders. By any standard, it met the threshold for the highest recognition. The recommendation moved upward through the chain of command. Battalion commander, brigade commander, divisional headquarters. At each level, officers added their endorsements. There was no argument, no hesitation. By April, the paperwork reached India Command. The citation was written in the language of military bureaucracy, formal, detached, clinical. Violence reduced to passive voice. Emotion stripped away. Rifleman Banbakta Gurung displayed outstanding bravery and complete disregard for his own safety. His courageous single-handed clearing of 5 enemy positions was decisive in the capture of the objective. The award was the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest decoration for gallantry in the face of the enemy. Established in 1856. Awarded sparingly. Only 10 Gurkhas would receive it during the entire Second World War. The medal itself was plain. A simple bronze cross. No ornamentation. A crown and lion above the words for valor. The medal was said to come from captured Russian cannon from the Crimean War. Historians debated the origin, but the symbolism endured. The announcement appeared in the London Gazette on June 1, 1945. By then, the war in Europe was over. Germany had surrendered on May 8th. Japan was still fighting, but the end was close. Allied forces were closing in on the home islands. The British 14th Army had taken Rangoon on May 3rd. Burma was almost free. Gurung didn't know any of this when the recommendation was written. Officers didn't tell enlisted men about awards in progress. Too many things could go wrong. Files could be lost. Citations downgraded. Decisions reversed. Better to wait. So he kept doing his job. Patrols. Sentry duty. Weapon maintenance. The routine of an infantryman between battles. The battalion continued south through April and May. Japanese resistance was weakening but still lethal. Ambushes. Booby traps. Occasional firefights when units chose to stand and die rather than withdraw. Gurung's section took casualties. One man killed by a landmine. Another by a sniper. Two wounded by grenade fragments. The war was winding down, but it wasn't finished. June brought the monsoon. The jungle flooded. Rivers overflowed. Roads dissolved into mud. Operations slowed to a crawl. The 14th Army consolidated positions and planned the next phase. Operation Zipper, the invasion of Malaya. The 3rd Battalion would be part of it. Then August came. Hiroshima. Nagasaki. The Soviet declaration of war. On August 15th, the Japanese emperor spoke on the radio. The war was over. B Company heard the news in a camp south of Rangoon. Some men cheered. Others sat in silence, trying to understand what survival meant after years of killing. 3 days later, Gurung's company commander called him in. He explained the Victoria Cross. What it was. What it meant. The formal presentation would take place later, first in India, then in Britain when transportation allowed. The king himself would present it. The news spread through the battalion within hours. The rifleman who had been demoted 6 months earlier was receiving the Victoria Cross. Some of the older NCOs, men who had known him since the Chindit expedition, weren't surprised. Others were hearing the story for the first time. The rock in the bunker became legend. British officers repeated it at mess dinners. Gurkha soldiers passed it quietly among themselves. By September, everyone in the regiment knew his name. But Gurung had a problem. His mother was widowed and frail in Phawlpu. His wife was young. His responsibilities were in Nepal. The army couldn't help with that. His company commander tried to persuade him to stay, offered immediate restoration of rank, suggested promotion to Havildar within a year. The Victoria Cross changed everything. His future in uniform was secure if he wanted it. Gurung declined. Politely. Firmly. He had done his duty. For years of war, Longcloth, the Arakan, Snowdon East. It was enough. The army accepted his decision. When he was discharged in January 1946, his rank of Naik was restored, along with the honorary rank of Havildar. The paperwork was clean. Honorable discharge. Citation confirmed. The presentation ceremony took place before he left India. A divisional parade ground. Full dress. Officers lined in formation. A general pinned the medal to his chest and shook his hand. Photographs were taken. The images would later appear in British newspapers. The Gurkha who killed a machine gunner with a rock. Good for morale. Good for recruiting. What the papers didn't describe was what came after. Later that year, Gurung traveled to London for the formal Victoria Cross presentation. The ceremony took place at Buckingham Palace. Dozens of servicemen stood in line. Army, Navy, Air Force, British and Commonwealth. Each with a story of extraordinary violence and endurance. The king pinned the medal to Gurung's uniform and spoke a few words. A translator conveyed the congratulations. The entire exchange lasted less than 5 minutes. Efficient. Formal. British. Photographs. Signatures. Done. Then Gurung went home. Phawlpu hadn't changed. The same terraced fields. The same stone houses. The same mountains closing in from every direction. The village had sent men to the British Army for generations. Some returned. Some didn't. Gurung came back whole. The Victoria Cross meant little to villagers who had never heard of it. What mattered was that he had sent money home during the war, and now he was there to work the land. Life returned to its old rhythm. Planting in the monsoon. Harvest in autumn. Livestock. Terrace repairs. Hard work. Predictable work. Nothing like Burma. He settled into it easily. His wife had waited through 4 years of war. They had married young, before he enlisted. She had managed the household alone, supported by army pay and extended family. Now they could build a life. 3 sons followed over the next decade. All would eventually join the 2nd Gurkha Rifles, following their father into service. The tradition continued. The regiment never forgot him. They invited him back over the years, Malaya in the 1950s during the emergency, Hong Kong in the 1960s, England in the 1970s. Each visit was ceremonial. A Victoria Cross holder. Living proof. In 1994, the regiment was amalgamated. Budget cuts. Reorganization. An end to an independent history stretching back to 1815. The old traditions faded. But March 5th, the day Snowdon East was taken, had already done its work. Some acts didn't need ceremony to endure. New regiments inherited new histories, new battle honors, new heroes. Banbakta Gurung's story slipped quietly into the past, not forgotten, but no longer central. The army moved on, as armies always do. In the year 2000, one final honor arrived. At Katar Garrison, the British Army named a training facility after him, the Banbakta Gurung Block, a permanent fixture for young Gurkha recruits passing through basic training. Every intake would walk past that name. This is what one of your own did in Burma. This is the standard. No speeches, no embellishment, just the reminder. The rifleman who cleared 5 Japanese positions with grenades, bayonet, kukri, and a rock. In his later years, Gurung developed asthma. It worsened slowly, year by year, until breathing itself became work. By 2004, he was largely housebound, living with his youngest son in Darapani, in Nepal's Gurkha district, the same hills where he had been born, the same mountains he had left 64 years earlier to join the army. He was 86 years old. The final years were difficult. Short walks became exhausting. Sleep came in fragments. But he was not alone. His sons were there. His grandchildren. Great-grandchildren. On March 1st, 2008, Banbakta Gurung died in his son's home. The news reached the Gurkha Museum in Winchester within days. Obituaries appeared in British newspapers, The Telegraph, The Times. Military historians wrote tributes. The last of the Burma Victoria Cross recipients was gone. Only a handful of Second World War Gurkha VCs had still been alive. Now there was one fewer. His Victoria Cross was placed in the Gurkha Museum. It rests in a glass case alongside the others, 10 medals earned by Gurkha soldiers during the Second World War. Visitors can read the citation. Study photographs of a young rifleman in uniform. Learn what happened on Snowdon East. But the rock is not there. No one kept it. Why would they? It was just a rock, baseball-sized, heavy enough to kill a man in a confined space. Dark with blood when Gurung dropped it on the bunker floor. Likely still there when B Company moved out days later. Perhaps buried when the Japanese recovered their dead. Perhaps still lying under decades of jungle growth on a hill in Burma that is now called Myanmar. Improvised weapons disappear. Grenades explode. Bayonets remain with rifles. Kukris pass down through families. A rock is only a rock, until the moment it isn't. Until it becomes the only tool available. The men who served with Gurung on Snowdon East are all gone now. The last veteran of B Company died years ago. No one alive remembers watching him stand up under sniper fire. No one saw him charge those foxholes firsthand. No one crawled into that bunker behind him. The story survives through records, war diaries, citations, museum displays, second-hand accounts written by men who were not there. But the records cannot capture one thing: the weight of a decision made in less than a second. The moment Banbakta Gurung stood up under machine gun fire. That instant when survival instinct screams stay down, and training says eliminate the threat. Most men freeze. Some run. A few attack. Gurung attacked, not because he was fearless. Fear keeps soldiers alive. He attacked because staying pinned meant watching more of his section die. The mathematics were simple. One life weighed against many. He chose to risk the one. Military historians study these moments. They try to quantify courage, training, leadership, unit cohesion, battlefield conditions. All of it matters. None of it fully explains why one man charges a bunker while others stay in cover. Victoria Cross citations from Burma read like a catalog of impossibilities. Men who should have died but did not. Gurung was one of them. The Gurkhas carried a reputation into battle. The Japanese knew about the kukri. British propaganda leaned into it. The fearless hillman, the natural warrior. The reality was less romantic. Gurkha soldiers were professionals. Trained. Disciplined. Effective because they were treated as soldiers, not auxiliaries. The mythology helped morale, helped intimidation. Gurung's action fit the myth perfectly. The lone Gurkha charging positions, killing with traditional weapons, using a rock when modern ones failed. That was the part people remembered. But strip away the mythology, and what remains is infantry combat at its most basic. Close quarters, poor visibility, weapons running dry, soldiers using whatever is within reach. The rock was not primitive. It was practical. The kukri was useless in that bunker. The space was too tight. The rock worked. Any soldier in the same position would have done the same. Burma produced this kind of fighting constantly. Jungle warfare, bunker assaults, grenade range or less. The Japanese built defenses into the earth itself. Taking them required closing with the enemy. Slow, brutal, costly. The 14th Army paid heavily. Disease killed more men than bullets. Malaria, dysentery, typhus. The jungle was as lethal as the enemy. Gurung survived it all. Operation Longcloth. The Arakan. Snowden East. For years in Burma. No serious wounds. No lasting injury. That alone made him rare. Most Chindit veterans never fully recovered. Many never came home. Gurung returned to farming. His 3 sons followed him into the 2nd Gurkha Rifles. His grandson became a captain in the Royal Gurkha Rifles. 3 generations of service. None earned a Victoria Cross. Very few do. The medal is rare by design. Gurung's sons served honorably. That was enough. You don't need to charge 5 bunkers to prove your worth. Some standards are meant to be met only once. And sometimes, history is changed not by grand strategy or superior weapons, but by a man, alone in a bunker, using the only thing he can reach. They did their jobs. They came home. They raised families. The same pattern their father had followed. In 2020, Banbakta Gurung's grandson visited the Gurkha Museum in Winchester. He was a serving officer, Captain Budi Gurung, and for the first time, he stood in front of his grandfather's Victoria Cross. The medal his family had known about for 75 years, but had never actually seen. After Banbakta's death, the family had donated it to the museum so it would be preserved properly, not locked away in a drawer or lost to time. The staff arranged a private viewing. Photographs were taken. The circle closed. The question people keep asking about March 5, 1945 sounds simple. What made that day different? Why did Banbakta survive when so many others did not? Was it skill, luck, divine intervention, or just the random mathematics of combat? Bullets missing by inches, grenades landing exactly where they need to? The answer matters less than the outcome. He lived. Someone had to survive. It happened to be him. That is the nature of war. Arbitrary, brutal, occasionally heroic, and mostly just violent and sad. But there is one part of the story that changes how everything else is understood. The demotion. That is the piece most people overlook. They focus on the rock, the bunker, the 5 positions cleared under fire. But the story really begins 4 months earlier, when a lieutenant made a mistake and allowed a rifleman to take the blame. That injustice was still fresh on March 5th, still burning. Military discipline depends on hierarchy. Officers give orders. Enlisted men execute them. When something goes wrong, blame usually flows downward. It isn't fair, but it is how armies function. Banbakta understood that. Understanding does not make it easier to accept. He had done exactly what he was ordered to do and still lost his rank. The platoon commander who issued the incorrect coordinates survived the war. He was promoted to captain, served several more years, and retired without consequence. Why wouldn't he? The system protected officers. It always had. Banbakta did not fight the charge. He did not appeal. He accepted the demotion and transferred companies. Some historians argue that the demotion motivated his actions on Snowden East, that he was trying to prove himself, reclaim honor, erase disgrace. That interpretation imposes Western ideas of individual vindication onto a man from a culture where communal responsibility mattered far more than personal glory. Banbakta was not trying to redeem himself. He was trying to keep his section alive. The Victoria Cross did not erase the demotion. It couldn't. The records show both. Promoted to Naik in 1943. Reduced to rifleman in September 1944. Awarded the Victoria Cross in March 1945. The Army eventually restored his rank. The gap remained. 6 months as a disgraced rifleman shaped everything that followed. Without the demotion, Banbakta would not have been in B Company. Without B Company, he would not have been on Snowdon East. Without Snowdon East, none of this would exist. The entire sequence traces back to one officer's error. The irony is unavoidable. The act that derailed his career placed him exactly where he needed to be to earn Britain's highest military honor. If he had remained a Naik in his original company, he would not have been in the lead section that morning. Someone else would have faced the sniper. Someone else would have charged the bunker. Or no one would have. 10 Gurkhas earned the Victoria Cross during the Second World War. Banbakta was the 8th. The last was Rifleman Lachaman Gurung, awarded in May 1945. Lachaman's action was even more extreme. A grenade landed in his trench. He threw it back. It exploded, blowing off his hand and blinding him. He kept fighting for 4 hours and killed 31 Japanese soldiers. That kind of courage seems superhuman. It isn't. It is desperation, training, and refusal to quit. The same calculation Banbakta made. Different circumstances. Same decision. The Burma campaign killed 32,000 British and Commonwealth soldiers and wounded over 87,000 more. Japanese losses were even higher, most from disease and starvation rather than combat. Snowdon East was one hill among hundreds. But statistics do not capture experience. Banbakta did not fight for the British Empire or abstract ideals. He fought for the men beside him, for the riflemen who shared rations, for the section that would die if the gun kept firing. That is what infantry combat reduces to. Protect your mates. Take the position. Survive if you can. The battalion war diary records the event in a single paragraph. Times, coordinates, casualty figures. It does not mention Banbakta by name. History often works that way. Training manuals still study Snowdon East. Fortified position. Interlocking fields of fire. Attacking force pinned down. Solution. Aggressive individual action to suppress enemy fire. Textbook. What makes it remarkable is that Banbakta executed the solution alone. No fire and maneuver. No covering section. No coordinated assault. He just went. The Japanese defenders had done everything correctly. Well-built bunker. Good fields of fire. Veteran unit. They still lost. Because one rifleman decided the position had to fall. That brings the story back to its beginning. March 5, 1945. A hill in Burma. A rifleman with a rock. Banbakta Gurung lived 63 years after Snowdon East. He farmed, raised sons, watched grandchildren grow up. The Victoria Cross spent most of that time out of sight. He rarely spoke about the war. Most veterans don't. He visited England 3 times for official events. Each time meant wearing the uniform, pinning the medal to his chest, shaking hands with people who wanted to meet a legend. Then he went home. The story survives because it matters. Not because of the rock. Not because of myth. But because it shows what happens when one person acts while everyone else is pinned down. Banbakta acted 5 times that morning. Each time expecting to die. Each time surviving. That is the mathematics of courage. Calculate the odds. Ignore them. Do it anyway. That is what the Victoria Cross recognizes. Not fearlessness. Not skill alone. Just the willingness to act regardless of cost. Rifleman Banbakta Gurung, VC. 3rd Battalion, 2nd Gurkha Rifles. Born 1921, died 2008. For years in uniform. One morning that mattered. The rock was not primitive. It was practical. In that bunker, in that moment, it worked. That is enough.